and surviving the wet weather. I'm just going to give everyone a couple of minutes just to come into the room, make sure you're settled. If in the chat you can just give me a thumbs up, you can see us all okay, you can hear us all okay. We do have the wonderful Lydia in the background. She's helping us today from the marketing team. So any tech issues or if we suddenly disappear, she's going to jump in for us. Amazing. I can see some familiar names. So just whilst we're getting ready for everyone to join, I'd love for you to say hello. We're going to do some introductions in a moment as well, but it would be good to see who we've got in the room today. So just in the chat, a little bit of an intro, maybe what you're looking forward to today, and we can get going. We're all really excited. I've got my coffee ready, and it's Learning at Work Week, guys. So if this is the first time you're joining one of our webinars, welcome. It's really great to have you on here. If you've been on my webinars before or any of the other LTT teams, it's great to have you back. But if you've not met me, my name's Yvette. I'm a senior consultant for LTT, 20 years in the world of people and culture for my sins, I think. And I'm really excited by today's conversation because I've got three absolutely brilliant people on here, but I'm biased because I know them all really well. And we're going to just have a really good conversation around mentoring, why it matters, why it's important, some of the lessons learned. And I think the combination of the three panelists we have today is going to make for a really, really interesting conversation. And I'm going to try my absolute best to keep to time. I am terrible when it comes to panels because I get way too into the conversation. So I'm going to ask Lydia as well to make sure I keep to time. But before we get into that, again, if you're new to our world, very simply, we help organizations get, keep and grow brilliant people. And we do that in lots of really, really amazing ways. And one of the things that we also love doing is to give back to our own community of HR and people and culture professionals. So as you all probably know, it is Learning at Work Week, and I'm sure you've all got amazing things that you're running throughout the week. And this is just one of a number of things that we're doing as the LTT team this week. So hopefully you get loads out of it. I'm going to share some things with you at the end that you can download and some of the rest of the webinars coming up for the week. So please keep an eye out for those because we'd love to see you on those. Morning, everyone. It's lovely to see all the names. I can see lots of familiar names as well. So it's great to have you here. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to John, Hayley and Angie, because I'd love for them to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about their backgrounds, and yeah, just, why this conversation is important for you today. So John, do you want to kick us off?
Can do. Hi, everyone. I'm John, unpronounceable Athanasiou. I'm the CPO at Hearst, which isn't a funeral company. It's a magazine brand business. So we're a business going through change. You'll know some of the brands. There's 16 brands. I'll give you a few of them for those that know them. Bizarre, Elle, Cosmo, Men's Health, Women's Health, Good Housekeeping, Esquire, etc. As you probably know, we're a business that is predominantly legacy-based print, but we're now doing social, video, audio, live events, etc., to really navigate the changes in terms of how consumers want to consume media. I've been in people functions for, I'm going to age myself here, 30 years at least, 20 years on board. I've worked across retail, public sector, D&I, education, and most of my time in media. And that's me.
Amazing. Thanks, John. Hayley, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Hayley Couldrey, and I'm an independent coach. I work at the Flourishing career, and I'm an associate at LTT as well. And my background is talent management, talent acquisition, coaching, and DE&I and well-being. And I also work as a volunteer at a charity called SmartWorks, which supports unemployed women get back into work. And I'll bring some of that experience into the conversation today. Great to meet you all.
Amazing. Last but not least, Angie.
Hello everyone, I'm Angie McKenna and I am Head of People and Development at Mackie's of Scotland, and no, that's not McDonald's. We, as my daughter thought, we manufacture ice cream and chocolate, so it's probably my dream job really. I have a background in generalist HR, but certainly since the pandemic it's been focused more on well-being, learning and development, and DE&I. And really looking forward to sharing our experiences with the rest of the people on this call.
Amazing. It's really lovely to have you all, and thank you so much for kindly giving your time this morning, because I know it's busy, but I really do appreciate it. And thank you so much everyone for your comments in the chat. I can see there's a few people who are starting to think about rolling out mentoring programs. Alison, you're talking about launching your second cohort. That's great. Perfect. We'll look for some tips. Amazing. Keep that coming, because that's what today is all about, right? It's about learning how others have done it. Also, John is going to share with us some of their tips, and they've just launched their mentoring program in Hearst. So we're going to kind of get the real live insight as to the lessons learned and what he would have done differently. But to start us off, I thought I'd like to just share, I think, what mentoring means to me. And I always come back to this quote, partly because I haven't been able to find one that better describes what mentoring is, but I just also think it so beautifully puts what that mentoring relationship is all about. And I think it's just someone creating a bit of space for you, right, to explore, to experiment, to have a conversation, sometimes to bring a bit of challenge as well, and to get, I think, out of the soundboard that we sometimes put ourselves in, and have a different view and a different perspective on, you know, whether it's your career, whether it's a particular skill you're trying to develop, whatever that might look like. It's that brain to pick, an ear to listen, and just as slightly, as I would put it, shove in the right direction sometimes when you need it. So as we get into the conversation, it would be great to know what mentoring means to all of you as well. And panelists, I don't know, is there anything you would add onto this, or a different take on mentoring before we get into the discussion?
I'll add something if you want.
Yeah.
I was going to say there's another brilliant quote that you probably have all heard of by Benjamin Franklin, and it's the one where it says, "Tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, involve me and I learn." And I love that quote because ultimately it's about how when you've got a mentoring relationship, you're ultimately connecting to people, and it's not tell, it's actually experiential together. Maybe some tell, but I think there's a multitude of all of them. So I really love that, and I think it is why we do things like mentoring, coaching, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I forgot about that quote. Really good reminder. Thanks, John. Hayley?
I just wanted to add the difference between mentoring and coaching, because I think sometimes people confuse the two. And mentoring is very much about somebody who is an expert or more knowledgeable in an area, sharing it with somebody else, so sharing their experience and knowledge. And it could be that, you know, it doesn't have to be a more senior person. It could be somebody who just is an expert in, say, I don't know, digital or social media, sharing that with somebody who doesn't have those skills. Yeah. Whereas coaching is much more about questioning, provoking, using tools, but not telling people what to do. So there's quite a big distinction between the two. And some coaches use mentoring and coaching in combination.
Yeah, and we see that a lot in organizations, right? I've certainly seen that the coach had to come off and then the mentoring had coming on, and vice versa. Absolutely. And I think it's important because there isn't a one size fits all. It's figuring out what the person who's sitting in front of you needs at that moment and approaching it in that way. Angie, any thoughts from you before we dive in?
Yeah, no, pretty much the Benjamin Franklin quote is the one that I live by, and as soon as managers kind of veer off into their way of mentoring, what they think works, very much steer them to the Benjamin Franklin quote, because the way I learn is very different to the way somebody else learns, and I think mentoring is it's a good opportunity for different learning styles as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So true. And I'm really loving the energy in the chat. Actually, it's the first time I've seen so many organizations who are starting to implement mentoring programs, and even across borders. Liz, you're launching a European-based scheme. That's really exciting. So yeah, definitely we'll keep that in mind as we move through. But I wanted to come to our first question, which is for Angie, and it's a meaty one, because I don't know about you, but I've seen a lot of noise recently around, well, ChatGPT can be my coach and I can learn this from Claude and I don't need to talk to other people. And I wonder from your perspective, Angie, in a world where, knowledge is now no longer a competitive advantage, right? Everyone has access to all of the knowledge. Whether you have the skill to access it is a different conversation. But when you have such an endless stream of opportunity to learn and to develop and to consume content, why do you think we still need that one-to-one mentoring relationship? And why do you think that can move the needle in a way that, any AI couldn't?
So I think AI definitely has its place, but it is also only as good as the data that's input into AI. And also, I don't think learning or mentoring from AI covers the larger inclusive aspect of mentoring. If we're talking about the Benjamin Franklin quote, if you're learning via AI, it's generally having to read something or almost researching, but it's also trying to make sure that you ask the right questions. So if you're asking the wrong questions, you're not necessarily going to get the data or the information that you need. But I think in-person mentoring is by far the way to go, not only because you're learning from the experts or you're learning from senior leadership people, but ultimately our senior leaders can also learn from those who are in lower skilled or lower paid roles, because they're the experts in their area. And a really good example of mentoring in a previous organization, we had an employee who joined us as a software engineer, junior software engineer. She was with us for about 8 weeks and decided software is not for her. Okay. She didn't know what she wanted to do. And the business could quite easily have said, well, we've recruited you as a software engineer. We wish you well. So instead, what we did was we had a conversation with her around what is she looking to achieve? Where does she see her career going? And because she didn't know, we slotted her into various different departments so she could experience the world of project management, the world of HR, the world of customer services. And she spent about 9 months in these different areas. But what that gave her was knowledge of the business, knowledge of how the business works, knowledge of various different departments. And she ultimately became a project manager. And that's where she saw her career evolve. So she started as a junior project manager. And by the time I'd left the organization, she was senior project manager. So that's one way of mentoring. And it's investing the time and investing other people's time. So she wasn't just being mentored by one person, she was mentored from a group of people within the organization. Nice. And then if I look at manufacturing, mentoring in person becomes even more important because we've got shop floor people that don't have access to AI technologies within their roles. So we do job swapping, and we actually joked on the call before this, but John and I swapping roles.
We love that.
Ice cream.
But I think there's some value in job swapping. So we've got people in the ice cream room where they're actually making the ice cream. But we've got somebody in perhaps our packaging area. So we manufacture our own packaging as well. And it's creating crossover skills. So not only for the business, because we less agency workers, if we've got absences, we can backfill roles, but ultimately for them, we have a wider skilled workforce. So I think definitely in-person mentoring far outweighs AI, although AI definitely does have its place in mentoring and coaching.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that's probably a good question for the audience. How have you seen, if you do run mentoring programs in your businesses, how have you seen AI being included within that? Because I think our conversation maybe now, and Angie, some of your comments has made me think that it's not an either or. I don't think it's an AI or a one-to-one mentoring, because I think, you know, if you've got a really good structured mentoring program in your organization, AI can 100% support some of that. I remember when I worked at CBRE, we actually used AI to help with some of the initial matching. I mean, we were a 100,000 people business, so doing that manually was just, you know, you can't match that many people. So we actually found opportunities to bring AI into the structure of the mentoring program, but I suppose it's not getting AI to replace the actual value of that one-to-one relationship. So it might be interesting from an audience perspective. Is there anything that you've seen, you know, whether it's in your own business or in other programs where you've experienced AI being included in that? And even Hayley, John, whether you've seen that. John?
Yeah, we Hearst globally, because Hearst is part of a bigger corporate, with, by the way, with data, finance, aerospace, etc. But they launched a trial on an AI coach, and they gave it to about 100 of us to trial, and I was one of them. And actually, there's good and there's bad. The good is that it gives you all the options, and it's kind of always on, which is fantastic. The bad for me was, and also it democratizes access. So actually, you can really make coaching, mentoring, however we want to term it, it actually gives access to way more people. The bad thing for me, or the thing it lacked for me, is when you've got all these options in front of you, when you've got a real life mentor that's got real life experience, it can help, that can help you navigate the options that I don't think an AI tool yet, I say the word yet because it might be coming, is able to really give you that human kind of real empathy and understanding to really be able to pick the right answer that you might need personally. And I don't think AI is ready for that. But from a matching perspective, love it. It's a no-brainer to use it for as a first, you know, cut of data. But you wouldn't rely on it again. You still need human intervention.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think Julie just hit the nail on the head. She's had experience with an AI coach used in another org, but for her, the human connection, that accountability, the relationship is still missing, and 100%, I agree. And it's interesting because I wonder, you know, when we're structuring our mentoring programs, is it that the place of our AI is to bring an opportunity for people to maybe reflect and help with some of the goal setting and to think about what they want to get out of it, and then use that almost to then help themselves get organized for that first presentation? Because, and John, you'll share this with us later, but often some of the biggest barriers to mentoring that I've seen in organization is I don't have time. I don't have time to spend an hour with this person or an hour here. So Angie, actually your point where you said, you know, this junior software engineer who moved into project management and, you know, having so much support around it, I mean, that's brilliant, right? You kind of want that, because you could have lost a really, really brilliant person with a lot of potential, and actually investing that time and effort and everyone being willing to invest that time is super important. But did you see, was there a bit of reluctance at the start, or was it a bit of a no-brainer for people?
Initially, there was reluctance, and that time aspect came into play. But the way that we coached those people who were going to be mentoring was, we'll use this person as an extra pair of hands in your team. So you keep telling me you're under-resourced, you need more people, you need somebody to do, you know, maybe it's the donkey work, but ultimately there's going to be some experience there. Use this extra pair of hands in your team as if she's going to be training to become one of you. And it was changing the mindset. And then all of a sudden, you know, some of the departments very quickly caught on, and they were like, oh, you know, we'll have her, and we'll have her for 3 months or 6 months. And then slowly some of the other departments did as well. And I think mentoring can also be used in a really good way to cover some of the skills that might be lacking. So rather than looking at your org and deciding, okay, well, we need a temp for the next 6 months, or a fixed term contract, or you know, agency workers, well, how can we use our current workforce to plug some of those gaps? And it also works in their favor as part of their mentoring.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some really brilliant comments and questions. And Alison said she'd love to hear some examples of how AI can be used, because the program is small. They've got 25 kind of pairings. So actually doing that manually isn't, too taxing. So how else could we use AI in those situations? So I think, Alison, the one thing that I would probably do is think about, usually with mentoring, the thing that I've seen that's missing is, obviously it's very good when people are together and they have that hour and they sit down and they talk, but then they kind of go back to their day jobs, and that conversation either gets pushed into the background or is never really surfaced again. So actually, could you use AI to build a bit of a digital journal as part of that mentoring journey, with kind of reflections, prompts for the person to come away from each session and building on some of their own thoughts? So to what Tonya actually said, can it be used to maybe externalize some of that thinking? And if that person is on a 6-month mentoring program, for example, they will come away from that with almost like a full journal of all of their reflections and insights that they've gained as a result. And that might even be able to then plot what a development pathway would look like for them going forward. So that kind of just popped into my mind, Alison, as I saw your question. But just from the panelists, before we move on, is there anything else how you kind of think you would see AI playing a role in mentoring?
I could briefly answer that. So, we have the in-person mentoring, but equally we could be using AI as part of the training tool, so developing training materials as part of the mentoring program. So, what training is lacking, identify what that looks like. What is their career development plan going to look like? And then use AI to put together a training program for them, which then has those reflections as well.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Perfect.
That's just in terms of capturing those insights post the mentoring program. So making sure that you're capturing, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and using AI to kind of crunch that data so that your next program, your next iteration can be improved.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, I feel like I can do a panel just on this topic. We should have just stick to this one question. And I am going to try, if we don't manage to answer all the questions in the chat around this particular one, I will take that away and put together a few thoughts, and it will go out with the recording. Just so I can make sure we get a chance to talk about everything. So John, this one is for you. Obviously, I know you've just launched your mentoring program in Hearst, and I've seen the initial round of data, and it's looking incredibly positive. But what do you think had to change, whether it's culturally or structurally, actually for it to have the impact that it's had so far?
Yeah, I mean, great question, huge question. I think there's a few things, and I would probably summarize it in 5 key areas. The first one, which I think is the starting point of any mentoring program or program, is how does it tie into the business priorities? What is the reason you're doing it? So for us, our purpose is why we exist, and our why we exist is to bring people together. So fundamentally, our main drive, whether it's customers or partners or our employees, is about bringing people together. So what a beautiful way of bringing people together, which is mentoring, right? So absolutely aligns to everything we stand for. So that's the first thing. Second one is, I think it's going from the informal mentoring program where people just connect informally, which I love, by the way, don't ever stop that, but making it more intentional. And to give you some examples, I could say we've got 4 schemes running at the moment. I'd roughly say we're about 30% of the company up on those schemes.
Nice.
And I want it to be higher, by the way. Next year, I want to get to 60%, and let's go for 100% the year after.
Not ambitious at all, John.
Not ambitious. Well, the whole need a bit of time, right? So what we've got a My Mentor scheme, which we did use AI matching for, but that was it. We used it as a first port of call. There's about 100+ people on that scheme, which is, again, more senior managers with more junior talent across the business. And what we've got is where you've got 16 different brands, you've got cross-fertilization of talent.
Nice. Yeah.
No brainer to do that. The other 2 schemes, one is a positive action scheme for ethnic minority talent. They're already on a coaching program, but what we're doing is reverse mentoring attachment to that program where they do group coaching, and that scheme is for our kind of mid to junior level talent that's ethnic minority. They're being partnered up with our exec committee so that there's reverse mentoring, to understand the experiences of our ethnic minority talent, 2 ways, and ultimately to support their careers in our organisation. The last one is we've got a next gen program where we bring in great talent, early career talent of any age, by the way, with no degree. Little plug, it's just closed. And what we've done, this is our 2nd year of running it, and so anyone that joins on it gets a brilliant SLT mentor, get my language wrong, mentor, and ultimately that creates community again across the business and actually fast track their development. And the last one is job swaps. As we've heard before, we're going to be doing that this year as well. So there's lots of different schemes, but they all kind of make sense. They're very intentional. They're not informal, but I'm never going to stop informal. A couple of other ones, 3 other ones. One is make sure you've got the leadership behind it, but they should also be in it, not just promoting it. That's really important to culturally shift it. 2, the other one is relationships really matter, and treat it like a competency effectively, because it isn't just about expertise. Relationships are important in all of our businesses and fundamentally change our cultures. So treat relationships almost like a core competency and you're on for a winner. And the last one is, what I think we talked about this as well, is measure it. So absolutely measure what's coming out of it, because if you can't measure something, you can't really go to your exec and say, right, this is the impact it's having. One of the measurements we use, and there's multiple, like progression, retention, all those wonderful things, but the one that I think is most powerful, and I've loved other people's thoughts on it, is confidence. Because one of the things you see when people come off mentoring programs is that they really feel much more confidence, and we're seeing a 50% uplift in confidence from what people that have been on the programs are saying. And that isn't just, by the way, the mentees, that is also the mentors, which shows it's 2-way.
Yeah, it's so true. I think I really like the word, and you used it a couple of times now, being intentional with why you're doing all the programs that you're doing, right? Because you are, I mean, I can definitely see all of those different programs having a particular niche that it's trying to impact and influence. And I think that's really important. There's a question, actually, well, there's 2. I don't think we'll have time to answer both. But Julie is interested to hear more about how the job swaps work. And then Karen is asking, how did the relationships in the reverse mentoring program work for you? Because she's tried to do it, but people kept just defaulting to kind of normal mentor-mentee relationship.
So we're just about to start it, actually, but the one thing I would recommend is training. And that is really important, because I think there is a nuance to reverse mentoring. And if you don't train your mentees in how they should approach this, and your mentors, by the way, and how they should be thinking slightly differently about the program, then I think you're kind of throwing people together again. So really be intentional about how do you want this to work? But what you don't want is it to be so structured that it isn't like kind of free flow. There needs to be an element of scaffolding, but not completely and utterly over-engineered. But if you don't do that bit at the front, then you're probably going to lose some momentum. And I think it won't be reverse mentoring, you're right. Particularly when you've got execs, in that relationship, they will take over potentially. What was the question? Job swaps we haven't done yet. We're doing it this year. I mean, I've done it before in previous companies. You see a massive impact. I mean, I did it myself. I did it in a distribution center where I was literally picking and packing, and someone then came and shadowed my job. And I learned so much about what is it like being in the coalface of being in our distribution center, actually doing, the work. So you get a much deeper appreciation of someone else's, what they have to deal with. I'm definitely going to do it here. We're about to do it this year. We'll probably link it to a charity of some form, but I'm sure that Angie and Hayley have got more experience in this than me. So I don't know.
Yeah. Any thoughts to add, the 2 of you, before we move on to the next question?
Yeah, just on the job swaps, what we also found with the job swaps wasn't just getting that learned experience. So like you, John, I quite like going on the coalface and understanding the people that I'm working with, what are their day-to-day challenges. But what we also started realizing was just because you're in that job doesn't necessarily mean you know everything. So somebody coming from the outside asks a stupid question because everybody thinks it's a stupid question, but really it's something that they won't see because they do it on a day-to-day basis. So, you know, creating efficiencies in different departments. And we definitely see that in manufacturing, where I'll go into the manufacturing area and we'll be doing something and, you know, massively inefficient, and I'll ask one question or somebody else will ask a question, and it's like, why didn't we think of that? And that could be an element of mentoring, but those job swaps definitely give more insight into different roles.
Yeah. Hayley, did you have any thoughts on the reverse mentoring? Because I know we've kind of talked about the DE&I impact of mentoring.
Yeah, I mean, I think with all this conversation, I think it's really important to get SLT buy-in to the whole program, because what I've found in working in organizations is often the mentoring happens at the kind of middle level and the lower levels, and those middle level people don't necessarily have that opportunity to be mentored by somebody super senior in a role that they would like to do in, you know, 5 years' time. But yes, in terms of reverse mentoring, I think it's important to really outline, you know, what the goal is, what the area that you're exploring is, so that you don't go off and revert back to that more senior junior relationship. But if it is something very specific that you've articulated right up front, then and that really helps focus the mind on this is what we're talking about, not all the other stuff. But I also think that, you know, there's no harm in allowing some of that sort of normal level mentoring relationship to come into it, because as long as it's not dominating, because what I found in a previous organization I worked with is often those reverse mentors were then given a little bit more visibility in the organization, because suddenly they created that relationship with somebody much more senior than them. So suddenly they had somebody advocating for them, saying, you know, that person's talented, that person has a great future here, whereas they normally wouldn't have got that exposure so early on in their career. So yes, there are loads of benefits all around.
Yeah,
I'm really in favor of it.
Yeah, and I think just before we kind of move on to the next question, I think with reverse mentoring, it does take an element of vulnerability, right? Especially from a senior leader to say, I don't know this area. I'm willing and open to be, you know, informed and, you know, taught what this looks like. So I do think usually when there's not that comfortability or perhaps even that safety and trust, that's often when I see people just reverting back to the traditional I've got something to teach you type relationship. Hayley, last question is for you. So when we think about mentoring beyond, you know, some of the obvious measures that John also pulled out, you know, retention and succession, where else would you say it has a really big impact?
Yes, so bringing in my experience from working at the charity that helps unemployed women get back to work, what I've experienced in this environment as a mentor myself is that you can really open up possibilities and, you know, potential routes and career pathways to people by sharing a very different perspective. So with this charity, you know, I meet people from all different walks of life, from different backgrounds to me, in a wide variety of, you know, previous roles, and just sharing my sort of corporate experience, my recruitment experience, my experience of working with HR professionals, really has opened up, you know, possibilities for people. And this can apply in the corporate world as well. So, you know, I think if an organization is really committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, helping people navigate a corporate environment can be so helpful to their progress within an organization. And this could be, from a variety of different, groups, socioeconomic groups, for example. So looking at my own career, I was the first person in my family to go to university. No one in my family had ever worked for a big corporate. And when I was, my early 20s, I landed in Unilever, and I was, like a fish out of water. I didn't have the language. I didn't have the confidence that some of my colleagues had who had parents in that environment. And I think mentoring in that environment can really help somebody just navigate through all of that, those sort of unspoken rules, those sort of, and help build confidence, and can sort of accelerate people's potential. And really help set them up for success. Because I think, you can get people onto programs, you can recruit graduates from diverse backgrounds, but once they're in, they need that support as well, just to kind of navigate through that environment. So yes, I think just creating a more level playing field is, if that's a goal in your organization, mentoring can really, really help. And then also at the senior level, we talk about this glass ceiling for female leaders struggling to break up into that sort of SLT, and mentoring can really help with that as well. It can help really have somebody to advocate for you. I think I mentioned this before, to give you visibility when you're not in the room, and also to bring you into conversations. So you're in a board meeting and you've got all these dominant characters with big personalities, and trying to find your way into a conversation. If one of your mentors is sitting around that table, they could turn around and say, "What do you think, Yvette?" and just bring you into that conversation. So on lots of different levels, it just helps encourage people to build their confidence, to have the right language, and to build their visibility internally, really, which is so critical to success in a lot of organizations.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really loving all the insights, but I think, and what it comes down to for me, and again, it's that word, is being intentional with it, right? For example, like you said, if part of your recruitment and talent strategy is to bring in early careers professionals, and that's the bulk of your recruitment, you've got to make sure that they land in a way that's going to set them up for success and build that confidence. And, to your point, if it's your first time in a corporate organization, it's a bit like a deer in headlights situation, right? And mentoring can be that soft landing and that opportunity for them to build connections and relationships really, really quickly in the organization. So yes, I think, mentoring, I think, if you want to call it this, the business case is there. It's powerful. It definitely deserves the investment in time, resource, energy, but it does have to be intentional. Otherwise, that is why it tends to be seen as just this nice to have thing. I'm going to jump ahead a couple of questions because we've actually answered the last two. I kind of want to go to this one. So just John, Hayley and Angie, if there's one thing, whether it's been prompted now by the conversation or the chat or some of the questions, but what's one thing that you would want everyone in this room to take away and act on or think about today? If you want to maybe kick us off.
I think first and foremost, because I've worked in organizations that don't provide this, is you need that structure and the psychological safety. If you don't have the psychological safety, it doesn't matter what coaching, mentoring program you try and put in place, it's not going to be successful. So I think definitely creating that psychological safety in the first instance would be one of my takeaways.
Yeah, so true. Everything else follows from that.
I'm just going to dovetail, if I can go in next. I was going to say, look, the psychological safety trust bit, the boundaries, and actually making sure that what you're doing as a mentor, and people have trained in this, is not crossing into management. because that's where I think it can go wrong, or also passing information back to management. I think that whole confidentiality piece is one of the most complex things to navigate internally.
Yeah.
So making sure there's real clarity on what that means to the mentors. But ultimately, my biggest takeaway is it's win, 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 win. Win to the mentee, win to the mentor, win to the culture, and ultimately, I think everyone's talked about it in the notes, but the strategic impact it has on a business from a profit perspective, even though it's super hard to measure, connections create ideas and innovation, and that leads to business results. So it does, at the end of the day, it links into the cultural impact that drives profit. So it's a complete connection all the way through. So don't hold back and do it.
Nice. Thanks, John. Hayley?
I think creating that senior level buy-in is critical so that it's seen as a competitive advantage in the business for all the reasons we've discussed this morning. And just really being clear on the benefits of mentoring and how it can impact the success of the people in the organization, but also business success. Helps, I think, set that up for success and gets that buy-in, because it is a big commitment of time, as we've talked about. But if there's a clear benefit to the business and to the people in the business, it's more likely to get off the ground and succeed.
Yeah. And it's interesting, right? Because when you look at mentoring programs, it's not usually a huge financial commitment, right? I mean, I've set up programs without spending a penny, but the commodity that's most expensive is time and resource. And if you can't demonstrate to people why this is a good investment of their time and their resource, anyone will tend to sort of be a bit, well, why should I do it? So again, it's that, are we being intentional? Can we connect it back to the strategy, or where this is going to create the most impact? This has been brilliant. I think we could have gone for another 45 minutes, if I'm very honest. Lesson learned, maybe do one question next time and just do that. But for everyone else, thank you so much for joining. So we've got a whole week's full of Learning at Work Week. The next two webinars are on the screen right now, so please do come and join us. Remy's going to have a brilliant conversation about what midlife teaches us about how we grow, so please do come and join that. And then Steve and Debbie will be taking us on Friday through a neurodiverse leaders webinar. How do you lead differently? So please do sign up for that. Then this is the resource I was signposting to earlier. So we have put this together. It's everything we know and have done and have experienced about building an internal mentoring program. Lots of tips, lots of insights. So please do dive into that. It should hopefully give you lots of ideas of how to structure it. I'm also always around if you wanted to talk about it, because we also relaunched, for those of you who don't know, our own mentoring program, which is our way of giving back to the HR community. So myself and Joe worked tirelessly and the team to really put a bit of structure and process around this. So we've got some experience of doing that for ourselves. But this is a little bit of a call out for anyone who would like to be part of the program. So we're looking for mentees. It's launching in July. We've got a wonderful lineup of mentors, very experienced CPOs, heads of directors who are willing to, again, gift their time, their resource and their experience. So if there's anyone in your team who is looking to develop that path towards a CPO and is close to that, please do reach out, because we'd love to have them on the program. And then if you haven't seen this yet, we have a wonderful new way of continuing the conversation. So please do join in our WhatsApp community. All of the recording and everything will be shared on there as well, but it's just a different opportunity for us to keep the conversation going and to use the extended network and knowledge that we have in the wider HR world to help each other. So please do join that if you can. So thank you so much, everyone. This has been brilliant. John, Hayley, Angie, I cannot thank you enough for your time, your energy, for spending the morning with me. I'm sure everyone will agree. There's there's so much we could talk about, but I've taken a lot away from the conversation. So any final words from the three of you before we say goodbye?
I was going to say, can I get some ice cream?
Yes, yes, you can.
I'll be your mentee.
I'll come and hand deliver it.
Love
I just want to say, it can be quite daunting setting up one of these. So you could try a small pilot program to start, and then once you've done that and seen the benefits, you can roll it out. So, small steps sometimes are really helpful as well.
Absolutely. Pilot is a great word. It gives you a lot of freedom. Amazing. Thank you all so much. Thanks for spending
Thank
some
you.
time